Brandy Lynn Hall was last seen leaving the Malabar Volunteer Fire Department where she worked in Malabar, Florida at 10:45 p.m. on August 17, 2006. She was supposed to work a full night shift, but left work early saying she needed to go home. She drove away in her green Chevrolet truck and has never been heard from again. The next day, her truck was found submerged in a nearby pond off Treeland Boulevard. Brandy's blood was found inside the cab, and her firefighting equipment was found in the pond, as was her cooler. The soda and beer in the cooler were still cold to the touch. A search of the pond showed no signs of Brandy. 10 months later, her backpack with her personal belongings inside was found in a canal by fishermen about 15 miles away. Her husband Jeff, also a firefighter, was arrested on charges of marijuana distribution along with another ex-firefighter. Brandy had also been arrested, although she did not know about her husband's criminal activity. Most charges were dropped against her due to lack of evidence, but she was still charged with commercial littering and pollution. She was scheduled to go to trial in October 2006, 2 months after she went missing. At the time of her arrest, Brandy had been working as a firefighter for the Palm Bay Fire Department. She had been an employee there for 10 years and had an exemplary record, but she was fired in the wake of her arrest. She also worked as a volunteer for the Malabar Volunteer Fire Department. Jeff and his accomplice pled guilty to the drug charges in June 2006. Strangely, Brandy disappeared the night before their sentencing hearings. Both would end up being sentenced to 18 months in prison. Authorities have found no evidence that Brandy's disappearance was related to her husband's drug trafficking, and Jeffrey has been ruled out as a suspect in his wife's disappearance. Before she went missing, she was planning to attend his sentencing hearing to support him. He stated they had a good relationship in spite of his legal difficulties, but others maintain his arrest caused major problems in their marriage. Brandy started having an affair with a married fire captain, and this was ongoing at the time of her disappearance. This fire captain was also on the phone with her for 11 minutes after she left the fire department. Many people believe he and his wife were involved in Brandy's disappearance. Brandy's family stated she was stressed over her unemployment and the charges against her husband, but they did not believe she would have abandoned her 2 young children. The night before she disappeared, she spent time looking through the phone book for places to work. Those who know Brandy say she would never have left her 5- and 10-year-old children alone, especially since her husband would be going to prison. Authorities believe foul play was involved in her disappearance, and while they have several persons of interest in her case, no charges have been filed. As of today, her case remains unsolved. Judy MacFarlane was last seen on January 13, 1992, walking home after leaving a Bible study. The pastor at the church stated he saw Judy standing outside next to some flowers. He said it started to rain, and he stopped and asked if she needed a ride home, but she declined. This was the last time Judy was seen alive, and her sister would report her missing a few days later. Over 6 months later, her body was found in a retention pond in Gainesville, Florida. A lawn service was at the site cutting the grass when they found her behind a barbed wire chain link fence. Strangely, this wasn't the first time the grass had been cut since her disappearance, and crews never reported seeing her or anything else out of the ordinary. Also, the area where she was found was behind a locked gate, and the Florida Department of Transportation were the only ones with a key. The retention pond was located in an area off Northeast 29th Avenue and North Main Street, less than a mile from the church where she was last seen. At the time of her disappearance, she was living in a mobile home 3/4 of a mile from where she was found. One possible theory was she was put in the sewer system and ended up in the retention pond, but there is no solid evidence to prove this. Also, the medical examiner was never able to determine her cause of death because Judy's body was sitting in the water for too long. Possible suspects include Judy's estranged husband, Jim MacFarlane, who had been previously convicted of smuggling drugs out of Canada. However, he was deported back to Canada before her disappearance, and they could never place him at the scene of the crime. Another suspect was Robert Norris, who had previously dated Judy's younger sister. Judy and Robert had gotten into a violent argument one night in 1990. The argument was so bad that Judy called the police and had Robert arrested. He was subsequently charged with multiple felonies and sentenced to prison. Suspiciously, he was released on Monday, and Judy went missing on Monday night. However, Robert was never charged in the connection with Judy's death, and he died in 2010 before the case was reopened. As of today, no one has been charged in her case, and it remains unsolved. James Marlowe Weaver grew up in Louisiana and served in the Navy. After he retired, he and his wife would move to the Fleetwood Mobile Home and RV Park on Phillips Highway, where he would get a job as the on-site manager. On May 26, 1985, during the night, his wife fell ill, and the couple's oldest daughter drove her to the hospital. When they returned the next morning, the two women discovered James lying on the floor in a pool of his own blood. He had been babysitting his 9-month-old grandchild when someone entered the home and attacked him. According to investigators at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, the suspect entered the home by opening a window and reaching through to unlock the door. The office in his mobile home was ransacked and a phone was left off the hook. Police say that James died from blunt force trauma, but they were never able to locate a weapon. Earlier that day, he was seen having a heated argument with a resident of the trailer park. Police do not know if he was targeted personally or if the suspect's intent was burglary and believed no one was home because the daughter had taken their one vehicle. One reason investigators believe that burglary might have been the motive was because a few items were stolen from the home, including $300 from the safe in the manager's office. The 9-month-old baby, thankfully, was left unharmed and was still asleep in his crib when the women returned from the hospital. In 2018, police were looking into 6 persons of interest and having the DNA found at the crime scene analyzed. However, no further information has been released on the finding yet. As of today, the crime still remains a mystery and the case unsolved. Jennifer Renee Odom was a 12-year-old girl living in the small community of St. Joseph, Florida. On February 19, 1993, Jennifer got off of her school bus at the intersection of Jessamine and Jim Denny Roads and started the 200-yard walk to her house. Jennifer's younger sister, Jessica, arrived home on a separate school bus but couldn't get into the house. Thinking her sister was playing a trick on her, as they often did, she walked down the road to their grandmother's house to get a key. When she returned and finally made it in the house, Jennifer was nowhere to be found. She then called her parents at work and informed them that Jennifer was not home. Worried, they rushed home and began calling friends to see if anyone had seen her. Hearing that she had possibly been last seen walking toward home, they immediately notified authorities of their daughter's disappearance. Friends on the school bus later reported seeing an older, faded blue pickup truck stopped on the side of the road nearby and stated that the truck began slowly creeping in the same direction that Jennifer was walking. After a massive search, a couple searching an abandoned orange grove in southeast Hernando County found Jennifer's body 10 miles from her home. It would later be released that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and that she had been sexually assaulted. Her clothes were missing, as were her backpack, jacket, and clarinet case. On January 5, 1995, a couple looking for scrap metal in Hernando County found a book bag and clarinet case in a rural area. Both matched the description of the items that Jennifer had been carrying at the time of her disappearance and were thought to possibly be hers. When the couple opened the bag, they saw a textbook with her name inside. Police would later confirm the fingerprints found on the items matched those of Jennifer's. These items were found 30 miles from her home and 18 miles from where her body had been located almost 2 years earlier. Convicted rapist and kidnapper Jeffrey Norman Crum Sr. has since been named a person of interest in Jennifer's death. DNA testing connected Jeffrey to a similar crime that occurred in January 1992 in nearby Pasco County. In April 2017, he was arrested and charged in that case. Authorities noted similarities between the 1992 case and Jennifer's murder. New testing is currently being done on evidence from Jennifer's case. However, Jeffrey has not yet been charged in her death, and as of today, this case remains unsolved. On July 17, 2015, Renee Collins and her boyfriend Piterson Delhomme were murdered in their Eagle Reserve apartment on Center Lane Parkway in Orlando, Florida. They were 26 and 25 years old, respectively, and had recently moved there from Palm Beach. Police say their 2-year-old son, PJ, who was in the apartment at the time of the attack, was not harmed. Renee worked as a service manager at a local Wells Fargo bank, and Piterson worked 2 different security jobs. On July 16th, the family had shared some Chinese takeout for dinner, then Piterson left for his overnight security job. His shift ended at 6 a.m., and by 8 a.m., Renee and Piterson were found deceased inside their apartment. Neighbors told police that they heard what sounded like gunshots. One of their neighbors, Kimberly Finley, would say she heard 3 shots within a 5-minute span. Even though it is a suspected shooting, the Orlando police have not officially said how the couple died or released any information about possible suspects, but they have determined the couple was attacked between 7 and 8 a.m. A few weeks after the crime, authorities searched a canal near the couple's apartment. However, it's unknown if any additional evidence was found. Investigators do not think the victims know the suspect and believe the person to be a very depraved individual. Family and friends think they may have been targeted by mistake and are still seeking answers in the case. There have been no arrests made in this case, and as of today, it remains unsolved.